Yeah, hello, dear viewers. Today we will talk with you about the political tension between the Azerbaijani government and the USA, the early election decision in Azerbaijan, and the target of the US official James O'Brien's Baku expeditions, as well as how the lawlessness in Azerbaijan is monitored by the USA on that side of the ocean. Please be active, write your questions, and grow our audience even more with your shares. Thanks in advance. Yeah, Mr. Goble, welcome to our program. Today we will have, I think, a very important program because our audience waiting for us. And as you know, we are living some kind of political tensions. Not we, but our government lives. Let we make amendments. And also, as you know, recently political tensions have been continuing between Azerbaijan's illegal government and the USA. This is happening in the context of mass arrests of journalists, politicians, and prominent religious figures in the country. The government is in a state of panic and excitement. In fact, for the first time, the Azerbaijani government Azerbaijani government accused their representatives in the parliament and some critical people of being so-called US spies agent. So I think this was a first. So what do you attribute the tensions created by the Azerbaijani government with the USA? And so what do you think about the political arrests in Azerbaijan which have been on the world's agenda lately?
Well, it surprises me. The Azerbaijani authorities simply don't have a compelling need to do this. They're lashing out at people and they're arresting them. This gives Azerbaijan a black eye. It's intensified concern. I mean, Americans reacted to the uh, uh, outflow of ethnic Armenians from Karabakh when Azerbaijan restored its sovereignty there, and then the this is all has gotten worse. I think it makes the Azerbaijani government look weak. It makes it look fragile. Um, None of the people that it's made charges against is in a position to overthrow or even very much challenge the existing power structure. And when you attack people who are not, in fact, able to do that sort of thing, then it's a confession of a kind of fear of weakness. I think it's been a big mistake. I know that Azerbaijan lives in a very difficult neighborhood. I know that people are afraid that something terrible could happen. But in fact, the Azerbaijani authorities have a sufficient power and sufficient resources to defend themselves and defend the country. So lashing out in this way um, makes them look weaker. It doesn't strengthen them. And I would hope that in time, um, calmer minds, cooler minds in the government would recognize that. Can't hear you.
Yeah, so dear viewers, just like the program and share for supporting us, please. And if you have any kind of questions, just please write here. Our program will continue approximately 30 35 minutes. So just minute, please. And what do you think? You can write, you can ask. We will try to respond your questions as possible as. And right now, well, I have the second questions. Just Mr. Paul Goble, do you think that the USA and the West want to change this anti-democratic government in Azerbaijan, which was not elected by the people?
I don't think that the agenda is to change this government, but to create a situation in which Azerbaijan will move peacefully in the direction of being a democratic country, which guarantees the rights of all of its citizens. I think that There's a desire to do this in a step-by-step, gradual way, rather than some kind of overthrow of a government. I remember 25 years ago when I met the father of the current president, who said to me, Mr. Goble, you need to remember that before you can be a democratic country, you have to be a country. And that his view was that he was in the process of establishing a country. This was in 1995. I think that what you have now is Azerbaijan has established itself as a country, and I think it needs to make progress toward democracy and liberalization. I think it's fully capable of doing that. I told the first president, Aliyev, that I thought the best thing that could happen to his country would be his reelection, but with 60% of the vote. That would mean that someone else got 40%. And that's how a democracy evolves. That's how you create a democracy. I think that trying to maintain some kind of Soviet order where the leader always gets 98% of the vote is ultimately disastrous. But what the West, the United States, the Europeans would like to see would be a stable move toward a opening up of a more liberal and democratic Azerbaijan. Unfortunately, the recent arrests don't help that. They make it more likely that each side will continue to see the other as not a potential partner for negotiation, but rather an enemy. And that's not the way you build a democratic society.
Yeah, of course. I know that U.S. and some kind of West governments just very respected to Azerbaijan. I feel it, but I have to say, just this artificial agenda is created by the government media. So, and of course, I understand. I know where I live just right now. Also, just let me say, 2 days, even 3 days ago, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of the State for European and Asian Affairs, Mr. James O'Brien was in Baku. Could the U.S. officials' visit to Azerbaijan have triggered the government's early election decisions? Just as you know, we have 3 elections in Azerbaijan the next year. One of them is presidential elections and parliamentary elections and municipality elections at the end of the year, the next year, I mean. Just what do you think? Could the U.S. officials' visit to Baku have triggered the government early elections decisions? How do you explain the political impact of the U.S. officials' Baku trip?
Well, I think if one is to, I don't have any inside information, but as an analyst, I would suggest that there are other factors much more important than the decision to have early elections was not made in the wake of Mr. O'Brien's visit. I think the United States welcomes elections in general, wants them to be free and fair, recognizes that there are a lot of things that need to be done, not just on the day of the voting, but in advance to allow people to participate in the political process. My own view, for what it's worth, is that the decision to call early elections was a decision made in order to put President Aliyev in a stronger position as he moves towards signing a peace agreement with Armenia. I think there will be questions on the part of some in the West about this decision because there will be a feeling that calling snap elections like this, coordinated where all the elections happen, and where there is in the Constitution a specification of when elections for the president are supposed to happen, that this suggests that we're still dealing with a political system that feels quite free to ignore its own constitution, and that will be viewed negatively by many people. So I don't see this. I don't think the American influence is so great that the visit of an assistant secretary or even someone more senior to Baku drives a decision like this. I think this has been in the works for some time, and I think it's a reflection of an effort to stabilize the situation politically and to be able to mobilize the population, which the government will certainly try to do.
Yeah, of course. Also, I was watched your explanations on the liberatory radio in Azerbaijan. What's the cause between political tensions, Azerbaijan and the U.S. government? So that's why I have enough informed about your explanations. Also, I have to say, there are such ideas here that the government is multiplying political arrests in order to release them in exchange for political bargaining with the West and strengthening its own position in the following year.
Well, it is certainly true that the United States and other countries will welcome the release of people who've been identified as political prisoners. There's no question of that. On the other hand, trying to use it in the way that you suggest as a bargaining chip tends not to work, because people immediately say, yes, they're releasing them, but they arrested them to begin with. And it will be it's hard to bargain in that situation. Yes, Azerbaijan will get credit for releasing them, but it will have to do other things to convince people that this represents a change of heart. I think that if the media frees up, if opposition newspapers and access of opposition figures to government media increase, that too will be welcomed. But I think you're going to need an entire shift in approach rather than thinking that, oh, we can arrest these people, then we release them, then the Americans and the Europeans will like us better. I don't think it's going to work that way. I don't think it works that easily. I think the West is aware that people who governments that arrest people in the hopes that they get credit for releasing them can't count on that working very long.
Yeah, Mr. Paul Goble, I have just only two questions. One of them is our viewers asks, could taking this electoral step to escape sanctions be right escape for the government? Will be successful for government for just escaping sanctions?
Well, elections always have two consequences. On the one hand, they allow the winner to mobilize opinion in support of his or her position, but they also, if they're free and fair, allow the opposition to mobilize. And since I believe that Azerbaijan, like most countries, has a population that's far from unanimous on most issues, both sides are going to be mobilized. So yes, the elections that have been announced will lead to the mobilization of some support, additional support for the regime, but they will also, if they're at all free and fair, lead to the mobilization of people who disagree with the government. And I think that how that balance works out, we'll just have to see. My guess is the government will make sure it wins, but even if it allows some electoral activities by the opposition, there are enough people in Azerbaijan who don't agree with everything that the president does. This is not the Soviet Union where you have 106% in favor of the government. This is probably a country where 60%, perhaps 70% agree with the government, but 30 or 40% don't. And you'd expect to see that reflected in the elections. And if you don't see it, then you'll ask questions, why didn't you see it? And so elections both mobilize opinion in favor of the government, but they also mobilize opinion against. And that's why elections are so worrisome and why free and fair elections scare many people in power, because they know that while they maybe can control the outcome, the formal outcome, who gets to occupy the position, they may not be able to control what goes on with people who begin to ask questions and who are able to hear alternative points of view.
Yeah, that's great. Just dear viewers, just please like the program, subscribe to the channel and share. Please just supporting us. Right now, I have only one questions. We can say almost two questions. Right now we have 10 minutes. Just if there are still hope in the U.S. political circles that Aliyev will become a Democrat after this kind of arresting.
Well, I don't think that anyone expects the current president of Azerbaijan to be given a prize as the Liberal Democrat of the Year. I think there's hope that he will recognize that it's in his own interest and the interest of his country for him to move in the direction of expanding freedoms and democratic rights for his population. The history of the 20th century should have taught people that dictators may do very well for a short time, but if they're in it for the long term, democracy works better for them as well as for their country. And President Aliyev is certainly aware of that tradition. If you look at the dictators of the past 100 years, you'll see that most of them didn't end very well. And I'm sure that President Aliyev aspires to a good end, and that he's aware and is smart enough to understand that opening the door to democracy and freedom for his population is more likely to lead to a good end than not doing so. So I think there's hope that he will move in that direction. The expectation that after this election or any series of elections, he will suddenly become a liberal Democrat, given the way he has run the country up to now. I don't think people expect him to transform himself overnight. I think people do hope for an evolution. No one, as far as I know, wants to see violence. Everyone wants to see the reforms come in a way that is a smooth transition. That's not easy. We know that from the experience of many countries, but it can be achieved. And I believe that if the government understands that it will do better with a genuine opposition, with genuine freedom, and that it will be stronger as a result, then I think there's hope that we can see movement in that direction. If there's an effort to stop things, to hold things together, to keep one's finger on everyone, then I think the danger will grow over time, that there will be an explosion. And I hope that that can be avoided. But it can only be avoided in the long term if the country moves in a more democratic direction with greater freedoms for its people than they currently have.
Yeah. Many thinkers claims that there will be a huge mass protests in Azerbaijan the next year. I have to ask that some U.S. ambassadors to Baku later entered into close financial relations with our government. That's a pity. The dominant idea here is that the USA and the West do not care about human rights. Let me say elections, just don't care about human rights for oil and their own self-interests corporations. And therefore, the tendency towards Russia increases. Do you think that the USA and the West will make serious and effective efforts in Azerbaijan to build democracy?
I'm convinced that the democratic agenda has never been absent. I believe that has been a constant subject of discussions. I believe that no one will deny that the United States and the West generally has an interest in Azerbaijan because of its oil and because of its position as a transit country for the Caspian Basin more generally. I think that there's a desire to have the oil continue to flow. But I think that there's a recognition that all the good things that come from the flow of oil could be overturned by a government that decided to repress its people so thoroughly that eventually there would be an explosion. The world would have been far better off, for example, if the Shah of Iran had reformed gradually than trying to hold everything under control and have him be overthrown. I think that that's why I believe the democratic agenda has always been part of the West dialogue with Azerbaijani leaders. And if one wants to say sometimes it appears that it's given greater emphasis or lesser emphasis, I'm sure that's true. But I don't think it's ever been absent. I think the commitment, especially in recent years, to democratic values and freedoms is as great as it used to be, as it was, in the Cold War. The challenge before 91 was easier in some ways because there wasn't as much of an economic component in the relationship. Now it's more difficult, but that doesn't mean it's gone away. It just means that the way it's articulated changes. But again, as I say, people who are engaged in policymaking are worried not only about what will happen today, tomorrow, and this week. They're worried about what will happen 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And because that's so, there's a widespread recognition in Washington and other Western capitals that a country that moves toward democracy and freedom for its population will be more stable and a better partner with Western countries than a country that doesn't. What I'm sure many Western countries worry about is that there are regimes in the world that think dictatorships are a good thing. One of them is in Moscow, which has a dictator who is busily telling everyone, I'm someone who supports you against any challenge. Well, democratic elections look like a challenge to dictators. And so that's the line that's the argument that Moscow is presenting. But Moscow is presenting an argument that ultimately won't work in Russia and it won't work for others. And so I think it's important to understand, and I believe that President Aliyev is fully capable of understanding this, that moving in the direction of a more open society with more rights for the opposition is in his interest, as well as in the interest of all the people of Azerbaijan and the world.
Yeah, Mr. Paul Qoble, I think it would be better if the USA and the West cooperated in terms of the democratic reforms in line with common interests. I think this is someone who sympathizes with life in the USA and the West. I know, let me say, do you want to add some kind of ideas? Is there anything else you would like to add?
Well, I have spent my life trying to promote the freedom of independence of peoples who are being ruled by others, or either others from another country or an empire, as the Soviet Union was, or by people in their own societies who don't recognize the right of the people. I believe that it is critically important that we remain supportive of democratic values. I'm in favor. I mean, there are technical things you can do. One thing that I certainly believe in is I would like to see radio broadcasting into these countries be supplemented by direct-to-home satellite TV. I would like to see a world in which people can reach into the homes of every citizen on their TV sets by satellite television that the governments in place can't stop. I know how much of a role Western broadcasters like Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the Voice of America, Deutsche Welle, Radio Vatican, Radio Luxembourg played in helping the peoples of the former Soviet Union to acquire independence. I am absolutely convinced that an expansion of that effort through television, and we can do it. I mean, direct-to-home satellite TV is very possible. It's expensive, but it's very possible. Would be a great way to expand democracy and human rights in countries which sadly have not made as much progress in that direction as we would all like.
Yeah. Yeah, the situation of the media, lawyers, human rights, economy, and opposition is very serious here in Azerbaijan. I know, Mr. Goble, I know you as an extremely respected and valuable thinker. We hope just that the whole world and the USA will decide to take effective and serious steps for justice and democracy and for their rights of those whose votes will be rigged this time. Just goodbye, dear viewers. Would you like to add something? And the program just will finish right now. I have to proclaim.
Thank you for having me. This is an important discussion. I completely agree that we need to do more. I think that one of the things, however, and let me end with this.
Yeah.
One of the problems that outsiders face is when they support someone inside in various ways, rhetorically or otherwise. There is a great risk that those people are fighting against will use that outside support to condemn them and isolate them in their own society. So it has to be done carefully and with a sophisticated approach. And I believe an expansion of the media in various ways, technically, that I've mentioned, is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining our broadcast, Mr. Paul Goble. Goodbye, dear viewers.